Most scraping APIs are priced for funded startups, not for the solo developer or two-person team running scrapers in production without a budget meeting. Scraping Bot has been quietly undercutting Zeit and Scraper API on price since it launched, and in 2026 it still sits in an interesting middle ground, cheap enough to start without a budget sign-off, capable enough for most mid-volume jobs, and just limited enough that you need to know where it breaks before you build anything real around it. I have tested it against live targets. Here is what matters and what the benchmarks miss. What Scraping Bot actually does. ScrapingBot.io gives you two main endpoints. The simple HTTP scraper fires a request through a rotating residential or data center proxy and returns raw HTML. Fast, cheap, good for static or server-rendered pages where the content is in the initial response. The rear browser scraper spins up headless Chrome, executes the JavaScript, and returns the rendered DOM. Most teams start on the simple API and only upgrade individual requests to browser mode when they hit a JS-heavy target that will not render without it. The credit model is clean. 1 credit per simple request, 5 credits per browser request. The free tier is 1,000 credits a month, enough to validate that your target is actually scrapable before you spend anything. Paid plans start at around $19 a month for 25,000 credits. At that tier, browser requests cost about 0.4 of a cent each. That is competitive with Scraper API's entry pricing and cheaper than Zeit on comparable browser volume. The API is simpler than it looks. Dan typical lenders on comparable browser volume. Yung view speed tiable planets. Yung tam tinsin tanong sang ping dice di ananas di anticipants. You pass your API key, the target URL, and 2 flags. One flag controls whether to use headless Chrome. The other upgrades you from data center to residential proxies. That is the full decision tree for most requests. Switching from simple mode to browser mode is a single parameter change, not a pipeline rewrite. That matters when you are iterating on a scraper and trying to find the minimum cost per request. Start cheap, escalate to browser mode only when the target requires it, and watch your credit burn rate from day one. Nitisian where it holds up. In testing against a range of common targets, including e-commerce product pages, news sites, government data portals, and APIs that return JSON but need a browser referrer header. The numbers were consistent. The simple API averaged 300 to 600 milliseconds per request. Browser mode added 2 to 5 seconds depending on page weight and JavaScript complexity. Those are not exceptional numbers, but they are predictable numbers, and predictable latency matters more than raw speed when you are writing retry logic and building production pipelines. Scraping Bot's infrastructure is stable enough that you can build around it without spending time debugging intermittent behavior. That is worth real money in engineering hours at the volumes most small teams are running. Where it actually breaks, here is the honest part. Anti-bot bypass is where Scraping Bot shows its limits on targets using basic detection, user agent fingerprinting, and simple rate limiting. The browser API handles most cases without trouble on Cloudflare protected targets that require JavaScript challenge completion and TLS fingerprint matching. Success rates dropped below 70% in my testing. There is no built-in CAPTCHA solver. If your primary targets run Cloudflare Enterprise or Akamai Bot Manager, this is not your tool. Geo-targeting is also limited. Country-level granularity covers US and EU. If you need city-level residential targeting or you are hitting non-US, non-EU markets reliably, you will hit the ceiling fast. That is where you need a proxy layer that goes beyond what any managed API's shared pool can provide.
The hidden cost trap. The credit structure creates a cost problem on browser-heavy workflows that is easy to miss when you are estimating budgets.
A pipeline making 50,000 real browser requests per month consumes 250,000 credits. And the strategies anti-many sentiments into sentient and quantity. Why build enter fast? Run the math on your actual browser to simple request ratio before committing to any plan. The sweet spot is solo developers and small teams scraping under 100,000 requests per month, mostly static or lightly JS-rendered targets, without hardened bot detection. Outside that window, per-credit pricing starts losing to alternatives at volume, and the anti-bot gaps become a real blocker. The proxy layer that completes the stack, Here is what I want to call out for anyone doing geo-targeted or account-level work. Scraping Bot's managed proxy pool handles anonymous content scraping fine. But if you are doing multi-account operations, social platform scraping, or anything where the platform is checking your IP's carrier, ASN, and DNS resolver, a shared residential pool is not going to cut it. Platforms doing carrier-level fingerprinting will spot shared pool IPs in patterns. What changes the outcome is a real mobile IP from a real carrier with sticky sessions so your account-level actions look consistent across requests, and DNS that routes through the tunnel so you stop leaking your real resolver. Singapore Mobile Proxy gives you exactly that. Real SG Mobile IPs, not shared data center ranges. Sticky sessions for anything account level. It is one layer in the system, not a magic fix. But it is the layer that matters when you are getting flagged on detection checks that have nothing to do with your scraping API's rendering engines. Pair it with Scraping Bot or any other API for the rendering layer and you have a proper stack. Grab a trial at singaporemobileproxy.com and see how the IP quality changes what you can actually do. Bottom line, Scraping Bot is a legitimate cheap entry point for mid-volume static scraping. Skip it for hardened targets, CAP Swingbuff close, or any workload where carrier-level IP quality is what stands between you and getting blocked.